Several years ago, I read a book, and it was entitled A Course in Miracles. And the definition of a miracle, according to this book, is when you shift your perception from fear into love. Each one of you tonight will experience a miracle. And being a yoga and meditation teacher, I believe the best way to prepare yourself to receive that miracle is to connect to your breath. Also, on a completely selfish note, I am extremely nervous, and it's going to help me to breathe with y'all before I go and do what I'm about to do. So if you would humor me for a minute and meditate with me. So you uncross your legs. You roll your shoulders up, back, and down. And then just become aware of your breath. It's called conscious breathing. It could be the first time you've paid attention to your breath all day. But take in a few deep inhales and deep exhales. And then slowly begin to close your eyes. Focus on the rise and fall of your breath, the rise and fall of your belly, the rise and fall of your chest. Continue breathing this way for a few more moments. And I'm going to cue us in a few moments to breathe in together. And when we exhale, I want us to sigh out the exhalation. But when we sigh it out, I want you to sigh out any fear or judgment surrounding around mental illness. Because I want you to be open to receive the miracle. Take a few more breaths. We'll all inhale together. And sigh it out. One more time. Now slowly open your eyes. All you have to do for the rest of the evening is sit back and experience a miracle. I stand before you as a woman who has experienced severe depression, anxiety, PTSD, OCD, ADD. I have been verbally abused, mentally abused, and sexually abused. I have been bulimic, and I have overeaten. I experienced postpartum depression with both of my boys, and I've attempted suicide 3 times. I've jumped off a bridge, and I've overdosed twice. I've been hospitalized 3 times. After the suicide attempts and the hospitalizations, I would be diagnosed with severe depression, OCD, ADD, eating disorders, PTSD, and suicidal tendencies to act upon. Those diagnoses would eventually become my superpowers. I know it sounds completely crazy. Let me tell you my story. After I received my diagnosis, AKA my superpowers, I did something far, far different than accept them. I owned them. I believed them to be a part of my identity, a part of my body, a part of my mind, and a part of my spirit. Now, by owning them and believing them to be a part of my identity, it kept me very comfortable in the victim state I was used to, except now I was the abuser. It also introduced me to 3 of my favorite drugs: blame, shame, and guilt. I made others feel shame for my diagnosis. I blamed others for my diagnosis, and I made other people feel guilt for my diagnosis. And clearly, at this point in my life, I wasn't super popular. I had alienated myself from most of my friends and some of my family. And when I had run out of people to blame, shame, and guilt, I then began to use the drugs upon myself. Now, this way of life wasn't going to work. My body, my mind, and my spirit were in complete despair, so I knew something had to shift. And it wasn't until after I had my first son. He was 6 months old, and I was sitting outside of our home in Texas at the time. I was sleep training him. That's a whole different story. And I was sleep training him, and I had in this moment what Sister Oprah calls an aha moment. He was staring and smiling at me, and I was looking at him, and I could not comprehend how in the world I, along with the help of my husband, who's here somewhere, could bring such a beautiful creature into this world. And as I was staring there, I realized at 6 months old, I did not have PTSD. At 6 months old, I did not have anxiety. At 6 months old, I wasn't bulimic. And at 6 months old, I wasn't severely depressed. Therefore, in my mind, at that time, I realized that I wasn't mentally ill. But I knew if I continued the drug use with blame, shame, and guilt, I would then start to blame, shame, and guilt that beautiful child. And if I did that, he would end up where I was, mentally ill, and I couldn't have that. Now, in this moment, I did realize what we are all born with. We are all born with divine love, divine strength, divine wisdom, and divine courage. In that moment, I connected to the divinity that abides in me. That is when my diagnosis became my superpower. I realized how strong I was. I shifted my perception of my mental illness, of my diagnosis, from a place of fear to a place of love. And when you do that, you connect deeper to the divinity that abides in you, and you become stronger. You become super. Now, you're probably wondering, what's divinity? How do I connect to it? Because I want to be super too. Who wouldn't? My definition of divinity is this: it's a power greater than ourselves. The love this divine source has for us is incomprehensible. We can't understand it. Some people call it God, some people call it love, Lord, I don't care what you call it. You just need to know that something greater than yourself loves you unconditionally. Now, how you connect to it, this is how I have found works for me. You're going to have to ask yourself some uncomfortable questions, painful questions, and you're going to have to answer them honestly. And when you do that, you're going to experience an emotion, and I want you to name the emotion that's arising in your body. And then once you've named the emotion, I want you to figure out where it is. And once you figure out where it is, I want you to find a physical practice with the intention of releasing that emotion from the body, from the mind, and from the spirit. I don't care what the physical practice is. I choose yoga, but some people run, box, as long as it's a bag and not a person. But you find a healthy way to release that emotion from the body. And when you do this, you will connect to the divinity that abides in you, and you will become stronger. It works every single time. There is no form of abuse that can take this connection away. We all have the power to do it. Now, when I was doing this soul searching and this work, I realized that I picked up my diagnosis when I asked myself those uncomfortable questions. And if I could pick up my diagnosis then, I could find another way to do things. And I did. I began to do yoga, I meditated, and I walked and connected to nature. And when I did that, I became stronger. And now listen, you're going to feel so strong when you do this. And I don't want to burst your bubble, but pain will come back, because pain does not discriminate. It doesn't care what color you are, where you're from, how much money you have. Pain is inevitable. It's a part of life. 8 years ago, when my dad died from a drunk driving accident, depression came back. And I said to it, you're more than welcome to stay, but you're staying on my terms. And my terms are this: you cannot and you will not kill me. You can only make me stronger, make me super. And then 2 years ago, my mom died, and I was sitting next to her along with my sister and my brother and her 3 best friends as she took her last breath. At that moment, I did not realize the amount of grief and despair I was going to experience. Everything came back: my eating disorder, anxiety, and I had suicidal thoughts almost every single day for a year. But I dug as deep as I possibly could into the depths of my soul, and I said to it, you are more than welcome to stay, but you're staying on my terms, and my terms are this: you cannot and you will not kill me. You can only make me stronger, make me super. And just when I was coming out of the depths of the despair, of the grief of my mother, My brother died. He died 1 year ago, and he died from his mental illness. He was also verbally and mentally and sexually abused, and he had severe PTSD and severe anxiety. And as I stand here in front of you, I'm still in a tremendous amount of pain. But I dig as deep as I possibly can, and I say to it, you are more than welcome to stay, but you're staying on my terms, and my terms are this: you cannot and will not kill me. You could only make me stronger. You killed my brother, but you won't kill me. And you can't take my children, my niece, my sister, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, my husband, or my friends. You have lived in our family for far too long, and it stops here, and it stops with me. I will use my divinity. I will connect to my superpowers and teach others how to do that, and I will help heal. So I have to ask you, will you join me? Can you shift your perspective from fear into love, from weakness into strength, and from something that you think could kill you to something that you think can make you super? My name is Kasey Elliot Maher. This is my brave, and this is my superpower.